Hey, this article was sent to me by a viewer, and I super appreciate that. If you see something that you want me to respond to, DM it to me on Twitter. My DMs are open, and it makes my job a lot easier. Okay, cool. Not too long ago, Nintendo announced their expansion pack for Switch Online. For reference, Switch Online costs $20 a year, and the expansion pack is basically just a collection of retro games for an additional $30. Naturally, people weren't happy about Nintendo demanding more money for 20-plus-year-old games, especially when their online services are already so garbage. This was one of the many tone-deaf things Nintendo has done in recent years, but you guys know how these things work. Major corporation does something that gamers don't like, then the game journalists try to clean up the mess and make nice with the corporation so their website gets some insider treatment in the future. I mean, it makes sense. If a company is getting a lot of bad publicity, writing a nice little puff piece is more likely to get their attention, so they'll throw you a shilling or two. Because who needs integrity in the gaming industry anymore? This piece of shit article was published by Inverse on October 22nd. It's been a minute since I saw damage control like this. Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack price hike isn't absurd, but the response is. And I'm sure you'll have some very educated and understanding analysis of what happened here. You know, like an actual journalist. Oh no, this won't be good. That was my first reaction when Nintendo announced that its Switch Online service's expansion pack would cost $50 a year. The original service, still available for $20, provides access to online gaming, cloud saves, and a growing library of over 100 NES and SNES games to play. The new tier, $30 more, set to launch October 25th, will offer all of this plus a collection of Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis titles. Additionally, if you own Animal Crossing New Horizons, you'll have access to the just announced paid DLC, Happy Home Paradise, normally $24.99, Jesus Christ, at no additional cost. The people of Mushroom Kingdom were not pleased. First of all, if you have to pay for the service to get access to a thing, the thing is not free. The wording here is just obnoxious, like, oh, if you pay an extra $30, you get access to this paid DLC for no additional charge. Like, that's literally not how this works. It's not free, it's part of the thing you're paying for. Basic reading comprehension. Second of all, pretty much every NES and SNES game can be run on browsers or phones. And while I understand the novelty of having them on your Switch, it really shouldn't be a selling point of the service. Third of all this should be irrelevant because you shouldn't have to pay to play your own games online in the first place. I've been saying this for years, and it should be common knowledge at this point. Paying to play your own games online is a scam. It's an unnecessary paywall that the console manufacturers use to cheese more revenue from you. The extra perks you get from Switch Online are just Nintendo trying to distract you from them putting their fist up your asshole by charging you to play your own games online. Like, just stop accepting this. I don't give a shit if they're giving me NES games if they're still charging me to use my own internet. As of this writing, the reveal video has over 900,000 views, 26,000 comments, and a 5-to-1 ratio of dislikes to likes. This amounts to a firestorm of angry customers on the internet. In the real world, it amounts to a gust of wind that blows some leaves on your driveway. But I don't wish to disparage, I wish to understand. No, you fucking don't. How does an unexpected yet nominal price increase foment not just displeasure, but community-wide indignation? And for the life of me, I cannot understand. For starters, let's just take an updated look at the reveal trailer. You said the reveal trailer had 900,000 views and a 20% like to dislike ratio. Well, on November 1st, it's at 1.2 million views and a 12% like to dislike ratio. Go internet. But also, I'm not a fan of how dismissive you are of backlash. You imply here that internet backlash isn't actually important to major corporations, but how many times does this have to be proven wrong? Remember less than a year ago when Microsoft was going to double the price of Xbox Live and then reverse the decision due to internet backlash? Remember when Halo Infinite looked like garbage and was going to launch with the Xbox X, but then was delayed for polish after internet backlash? Remember when Doom Eternal launched with horrendous anti-cheat, and then it was removed over internet backlash? What I'm saying here is do your fucking job before you try to tell me how to do mine. We find ourselves in a period of strange math. People desire more and more stuff for less and less money. Among the thousands of negative comments, YouTube commenters regularly say they'd be happy with a $10 or even $20 increase. Before the pricing was announced, Nintendo Life asked its readers what they considered a fair price for the added content. The choices were free, $5 a year, $10 a year, $15 a year, or $20 a year. Out of nearly 20,000 votes, 91% said $10 or less. Clearly, the website was not expecting Nintendo to price the content at $30. Yeah, $10 a year is perfectly reasonable for retro games. The games included with the expansion pass are from the Genesis and N64. The kind of stuff that can be emulated on your phone. If you're going to charge for stuff like this, $10 a year is honestly perfectly reasonable. The problem is that they're demanding triple that, and they're using it as a vessel to keep you from paying to play your own games online, which we've established is a scam, especially when the online is as bad as Nintendo's. Nintendo has gone insane, wrote multiple commenters under the reveal video. What does it mean then if a company's request is feasible at $10 but madness at $30? It means asking for $167 more a month is tantamount to treason. That means that for less than 6 cents a day, A company has gone from inspiring excellent glee to inciting frothing rage. I dare say someone has gone insane, but it ain't the multi-billion-dollar company that's been synonymous with video games since the 1980s. Does it sound a little absurd when you break it down like that? Yes, absolutely, which is why no one's breaking it down like that. Because we're not upset about the actual day-to-day cost, we're upset at the tone deafness of Nintendo. They have some of the worst online connection in gaming history. They have some of the most anti-consumer policies and pricing in the entire industry, and in response to that criticism, they introduce a new subscription service to distract us. The literal price is not the problem. The notion behind the service is the problem. And frankly, the price for something like this is still too high. The fact they want you to pay $50 a year for games you can emulate on practically any computer for free and with better performance is a slap in the face. But when in doubt, just redirect the criticism. You can't actually criticize Nintendo because you're a game journalist, so you redirect the criticism to the consumer. The difference between $10 more a year and $30 more a year is functionally irrelevant. A gap approaching that of a missing step in a staircase. You can stretch your legs a bit higher and continue the climb. The resulting outcry of the expansion pack, however, treats the price bump as if it's a sinkhole swallowing somebody's childhood home, a chasm stretched across time and space. That's right, everyone. If you don't want to pay for the service, it's because you're cheap. Trust me, I'm a journalist. Let's take a look at another subscription service that perhaps warrants some raised eyebrows. Mario Kart Tour, Nintendo's mobile version of its popular kart racer, is free to play, or free to start in Nintendo's particularly nomenclature, a sleight of hand to minimize players' frustration when they're prompted inevitably to buy upgrades with real-world money. You can just call it freemium. Everyone just calls games like this freemium. For an extra $5 a month, you get the Gold Pass, which gives you in-game rewards that non-subscribers can't access. That comes to $60 a year, a full $10 more than the Switch Online expansion pack. One gives players access to over 125 games from 4 classic console libraries. The other lets you maybe earn digital tokens with a shiny glimmer. And yet, out of over 930,000 reviews on Apple's iTunes store, why don't you just call it the App Store? Mario Kart Tour receives a 4.7 out of 5, with the vast majority of players nonplussed over the optional fee. When in doubt, bring up false equivalencies. Mario Kart Tour is an ongoing game that Nintendo is currently working on and supporting. The games in the expansion pack are decades old and require no additional upkeep from Nintendo, but they're still trying to charge a subscription for them. And again, the only reason they're doing this is so you won't focus on the fact that Switch Online is a scam on its own. Granted, the products serve 2 different audiences with 2 sets of expectations. Oh, self-awareness, that's rare. But the gulf in reactions is notable, if not surprising. Perhaps the difference is time. Players make a lot of noise on social media and threaten boycotts, then life goes on as usual. More often than not, the target of these Nintendo doomsayers' ire is a grand success. In 2019, fans planned to boycott Pokemon Sword and Shield because the full Pokédex would not be available. This rendered the catchphrase "gotta catch 'em all" totally inaccurate. Thus, the developers should be tarred and feathered. A number of disgruntled fans even coined the term Dexit to refer to this outrageous omission of Pokemon in the game, semi-seriously likening it to the UK leaving the European Union, or Surely the franchise could not survive such a crisis of confidence. Once again, a games journalist completely misrepresenting the criticism of a game. You say people were mad about Sword and Shield because it didn't have the entire Pokédex, when in reality, Sword and Shield had half the Pokédex. It wasn't missing a handful, or maybe 1 gen, it was missing 50% and still charging the same as previous entries. A lot of content from previous games was also just missing, once again, with no alteration to the asking price. Less content, no gameplay improvements, same asking price. That was the problem. And just glancing at the Metacritic page should make this obvious. A 4.6 user score is embarrassing for a franchise this high profile. And this review from Chocolate Crane pretty much explains things perfectly, so I'll leave it on screen for a few seconds if you want to pause and read. When game companies know they can turn a profit on anything, and they have journalists in their corner, they're going to do it. Instead, Sword and Shield have so far sold 21.85 million copies. It's not just consumers that compete for the loudest knee-jerk reaction. Plenty of journalists and enthusiast writers share a collective sense of confusion over Nintendo's decision-making. Forbes called the Switch Online bundle and price absurd. VentureBeat also calls the new online pricing absurd. You could have just said both outlets call it absurd. You didn't have to list it twice. But I mean, what's your opinion on Madden then? Or FIFA, the games that remove content regularly, year to year, and charge the same amount of money because they're not trying to appeal to a core fan base anymore. They're just trying to hook new people in and sucker people in with the brand. They suggest improvements and additions, but then don't actually do it, because if they did, they would have to put more effort into the next one, and they don't want to do that. Just because the game sold well doesn't mean it was good. It just means the publisher had a good marketing team. By your logic, FIFA 21 is a great game and nobody can criticize it because it sold a bunch of copies. Shitty products still manage to turn a profit a lot of the time. Case in point, your employer. Come on, the uninspired headline writing irks me more than the consumer backlash. If we're going to complain, let's at least do so thoughtfully. Jonathan Swift calling for a collective swerve to baby cannibalism is absurd. A medieval knight referring to his severed limb as a flesh wound is absurd. A company charging $50 a year for old games is slightly more expensive than the gaming community expected. Had Nintendo thrown in a free back rub and a packet of Kirby-scented bath loofahs, that would have been absurd and positively delightful. I'm sorry, did you just say $50 a year is slightly more than expected? After you opened this article by admitting the expansion pass is triple the price of what people wanted? You said the community was willing to pay $10, but instead it was marked at $30, and you just said that was a slight increase over what people wanted? Nintendo has a history of inciting ridiculous reactions, both positive and negative. It kind of makes sense. The company is in the business of entertainment, offering a much-needed respite from the mundane nature of day-to-day living. Fans are fanatical by definition. When the new thing, whatever it is, brings you hope and joy, you might cry, like those who watched Sora become a new character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. When that new thing brings disappointment, many lash out. What you should do is take a breath, consider your priorities, eat a grilled cheese sandwich, and go walk your dog. For the 7th time, this is not disappointment in a product. It's pushback from a community that's sick of being taken advantage of. Nintendo isn't exactly in the public's good graces right now, hence me calling this announcement tone deaf. When you see a group of people lash out at a company like this, your reaction should be to understand why they're doing this, because it's almost always a lot more layered than what it seems at first glance. The backlash to Infinite Warfare was years in the making. The backlash to Diablo Immortal was years in the making. These games are infamous in the industry, but both of them could have slipped by uncriticized if they were announced at a different time. Nintendo could have gotten away with the expansion pass if it was revealed a few years ago, but context fucking matters, not that a journalist would care about that. Do anything but the digital temper tantrum we've come to expect and accept as part of living in our connected world. In the meantime, if you're excited about playing Mario Kart 64 with friends online for the first time ever, you could have emulated that for years now. Want to try out heralded Japanese-only release Sin and Punishment? Again, you could have emulated that for a long time. Or are planning to play vaunted classics like Super Mario 64 or Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on your Switch? You can buy a replica N64 controller for another $50, but you'll have to wait for the moment they're already sold out. Nothing wins over the audience like turning your article into a literal advertisement. If you're upset about the expansion pass, you are more than justified. Nintendo's business practices have gotten out of control, frankly, and they've rapidly become the most anti-consumer company on the market. I understand journalists want to make money too, but when you throw your own consumer base under the bus like this, you can't be surprised when they push back, because that's exactly what happened to Nintendo. Toodles.
I think I do. Yeah, I do.
Set it up.
It's placed.
Picked up our teammate's banner.
I have a banner.
It's dropping, it's dropping, it's dropping.
I'll just turn.
They're set up in zone already.
Yeah, they're on red, on
90
red.
bullets.
On red. Above you. Crack fell.
Reloading. Need to recharge my shields.
Octane cracked.
Rings coming in.
Octane knocked.
Nice. 52 plus.
Dead.
Good shit. Fuck, yes. Dude, we're playing out
Fucking
of
4 in
our
a row.
minds today. Fuck.
Holy fuck.